Rewind the dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. John Pollock and Wai Ting are here live Wednesday night. Excitement.
Yes. Are you saying that sarcastically? Because I think this is exciting. It's very exciting.
There's a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted today. Today was just one of those days that there was just a lot going on before Dynamite. A lot during Dynamite. And now we get to chat about all of it.
Let's get right into it.
Well, let's first of all give a guest announcement, an update that this Sunday, Prince Nana on the NWA podcast. So look out for that on Sunday.
Really cool to hear. I'm sure we'll have plenty to say. So I look forward to what Nate and Chris have to say with him.
Yes, go check that out. You can also check out a new edition of Up Next is on the site, recapping the Great American Bash. Wai and I will share some thoughts. Did you saw Tuesday's show?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay, well, we will get into that. That's up on the site. And then, lots to come this week. MCU later, UFC coverage, it's all going to happen. But let us first get into a bunch of news items. And I'm going to start off with two passings that occurred. The first being Chris Romero, who wrestled as Chris Youngblood for years, part of the Romero wrestling family. And for those that maybe are not familiar, Chris was the son of Ricky Romero, who is a pretty well-known performer, lived to be 74 years of age, and he had 6 children, 3 of whom went into pro wrestling. Very well-known would be Jay Youngblood, who was a phenomenal talent who died at a very young age of 30. And afterwards, it was Chris that got into wrestling the same year that his brother died and teamed with his brother Mark Youngblood. And together they went to a lot of different promotions. They wrestled in World Class together. They had a lot of visibility in Puerto Rico for the World Wrestling Council and going to All Japan. Both Youngbloods were fairly regulars there from 92 through 96. But it was in Puerto Rico that they won a number of tag championships, and they were actually on the card in 1988 when Bruiser Brody was stabbed in the locker room. They ended up working the show that night in Bayamon and did continue to wrestle in Puerto Rico for several years after the fact, but unfortunately, present for a really horrific incident in pro wrestling history. They did have a short stay in WCW wrestling as the Renegade Warriors. That lasted about a year. They wrestled on some Clash of the Champions cards. They were on the Halloween Havoc show in 1990, where they took on Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin. And then as the 90s progressed, it was mainly All Japan for them. Chris wrestled a bit in FMW. And then throughout the Texas independents, he opened up a wrestling school. He ran some groups there and kind of wound down his in-ring career in 2007. The entire family, they were honored a couple of years ago at the Cauliflower Alley Club. And then the news came out today from one of his other brothers that he had passed away. He was reportedly 55 years of age, so not all that old. But no cause of death is known. So, part of a fairly well-known family, and especially it's I think what the individual most would be familiar with is Jay Youngblood for that phenomenal team he had with Ricky Steamboat. But we have a lengthy story up on the site on Chris Romero. 55 is, in wrestling way, that's still young, man. 55 years old to be hearing about it. But again, we don't really know what the cause was. What he might have been going through.
Yeah, we just went through Del Wilkes, on our last show talking about it, following at least similar career trajectory over in Japan. So, and a similar age too. So, really unfortunate news.
He was on some of those those shows we used to produce at the Fight Network, where we had the random shows from Texas, and he wrestled like Steve Austin. You can easily find like a match of him pinning Steve Austin right when Austin was just breaking in, along with like that whole crew as well. He spent some time with USWA, so around that era as well. And then the other passing was Cyanide Sid Cooper. And it's not like a great Cyanide Sid Cooper story that I have, but when I was 15 or 16 years old, I was at a bookstore, and if I saw, like, this is, I would say 2000, and wrestling books were starting to become more plentiful. This is after Mick Foley's book has come out, and you kind of got that surge of wrestling books. So if I saw a wrestling book, I would usually be drawn to it, and that's where I was familiar with all the usual ones. And then I was downtown. I might have been at a Tower Records, and there was Simon Garfield's book, The Wrestling. I was like, this is a book I have not seen before. And I bought it, and it was all about like UK wrestling history. And that was the first time I saw the name Cyanide Sid Cooper. And I was like, that is the best name of a villain I've ever heard of. Cyanide Sid. And that's what I always thought of that name. I'm like, that is the best wrestling name I've ever seen for a heel. To this day, I would say my favorite nickname for a wrestler. He was someone that William Regal has talked about a lot as one of his heroes growing up that he would borrow a lot from. He started out his career wrestling as Norman Cooper and then more famously as Cyanide Sid, but just a legendary heel during the World of Sport era throughout the 70s, the 80s, right up until kind of ITV shut down World of Sport at the end of 1988. But just I would say for our UK listeners, maybe older ones, what would be a name from your childhood if you're kind of a generation above?
Yeah, our condolences.
Moving over to WWE, this came out Tuesday morning, and that was Jimmy Uso, Jonathan Fatu, being arrested for another DUI. This is the third DUI involving Jonathan Fatu. The first one was way back in 2011, but the second one was only 2 years ago. And, the details don't paint a great picture. He was pulled over on Monday night in the Pensacola, Florida area after he had apparently gone through a red light. And then they were able to, I guess, administer a breath test, and he registered well above the limit. He had a 0.205 level, and in Florida, the limit is 0.08. We have reached out to WWE. They have not commented at all, which is noteworthy because, in the past, over several years, when these incidents have occurred, the standard line has been so-and-so is responsible for their own actions. WWE has not sent out that generic statement. So I don't know if they are going to have something more thorough. I would be very surprised, Wai, if he is just on SmackDown Friday. I think this is a very concerning pattern that has emerged. And I think first and foremost, it is getting help for this individual because this is very, very serious. And it is through sheer luck that no one has been seriously hurt here.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a terrible situation. And if you're somebody who is a fan of Jimmy Uso's, like I think a lot of us are, seeing him and his brother get their big breaks as single stars right now, and Jimmy in particular being in the midst of the main event scene with Roman right now, it breaks my heart as a fan to see him, be involved in something like this. And I totally agree. I think there should be appropriate punishment. I wouldn't want to see him on TV. In a PR sense for the company, it's no good can come, honestly, of just having him continue to be part of a story as if nothing happened, as if this didn't exist. So, I hate to say it. I'm a big fan of the guy, but I don't really care to see him in this current storyline until he gets his life sorted out.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the priority. I mean, you want him to take care of whatever problems are going on, but this is something that I mean, something needs to be done. And again, it's more than just your own health and safety. You are putting other people at risk getting behind the wheel in that kind of condition. And it's just, to me, I don't know what else you can do if you're the company. I mean, this is staring you right in the face to take some kind of action over.
Do you think they let him go?
I don't know if they would take that step to let him go, but I think like the options have to be laid out there at this point that, listen, this is like, you got your pass 2 years ago, and now this has happened again. So now something needs to be done, whether it is going to rehab, something needs to be done. And then based on how receptive he is to whatever is presented to him, that then you have to go in whatever direction it is. I'm not a big fan of just letting someone go, but at the same time, that would not stun me either.
Yeah, just, given, I would say, the recent round of cuts. But I mean, this is a different situation. I think first and foremost, you want to make sure that the guy stays healthy or gets healthy. And
you go back, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, this is going back a long time ago. But when Jeff Hardy was going through a lot of his problems in 2003, it was largely presented to him, listen, you have to go to rehab. He did not want to go to rehab. They cut him. Like that was the option that was there. So I don't know how they're going to handle this, but they have to do something. This cannot just be hey, we're going to treat this like the one in 2019. I just don't think that can fly. And it's very concerning. It's very, very concerning. Mm-hmm. Raw on Monday night, these numbers came in from Brandon Thurston at WrestleNomics, and they are coming off the 4th of July weekend, and viewership was down. 1,472,000 viewers, which of the available data for Raw, this would be the lowest of all time for numbers that we have for Raw. They did 536,000 viewers in the 18 to 49 demo. That is not their lowest of all time in the demo, but would be in overall viewership, doing a 0.41 in 18 to 49. They did not have an NBA game going against them. They did go against the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I would look somewhat at the 4th of July, but at the same time, the Monday after 4th of July weekend has happened every single year. So I think you can attribute it somewhat to that. I mean, last year, granted, you didn't have the playoffs at the same time, but they did over 1.6 million. Do you look at this number? Is it concerning to you, Wai? We are going back to crowds. The playoffs are going to end. Or is this one of those numbers that you flinch if you're in WWE? Does this one register to that degree?
I feel like there have been many instances already in the past, recent past, where you would have expected them to have that sort of reaction, and maybe they would meet it with some sort of big gimmicky show or gimmicky concept like a Raw Underground. I don't necessarily see them reacting that way this time around because they are going back to live crowds, and I feel like live crowds should make up for quite a bit. And I also feel like the quality of the show might change for the better as well. So, they're on the verge of sort of like a mini rebrand, I would assume, when crowds come back, and therefore I don't see them being too reactionary to this one.
Mm-hmm. You've got like two competing things going on, though. You are going back to crowds, which in theory it's not going to hurt. You also have the Olympics coming up, so that's a couple weeks of the Olympics. But granted, they are in Tokyo, so you're going to be live coverage of the Olympics. Like, you'll still have your primetime coverage, but some of it will be, the results will be out there. So I don't know if it would have the same impact as, say, an Olympics in North America where it's more time zone friendly.
I wonder if that's sport dependent as well.
It will be, yeah. Certain things will have more appeal than others. Sticking on the WWE television front, this was an interesting announcement they made that for the July 23rd edition of SmackDown, they are teaming up with the Rolling Loud Rap Festival in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium. And this is from the release that they put out. Gracing the same stage as festival headliners Travis Scott, Post Malone, and A$AP Rocky, WWE superstars will compete in matches live from Rolling Loud Miami. The July 23rd edition of Friday Night SmackDown on Fox will feature a split-site broadcast with multiple matches at Rolling Loud Miami, and the remainder of the evening held at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland.
I was really surprised to read something like this because it is very unlike main roster WWE or really any WWE show to kind of split their broadcasts. You know, it's one thing for them to like book the Manhattan Center to do a, you know, split broadcast for their anniversary show, but to split it with a concert, a rap concert at that, it seems like a very unique, different type of move for WWE.
I think these kinds of things are always worth trying. You do have like the inherent just scope of it, of how will wrestling matches work in that environment for that crowd versus as well your crowd in Cleveland, that in theory there's going to be breaks during the actual show that you're going to be watching matches on the screen. But overall, like, I think you have to try things like this that are different, that are just a departure from the norm. I think that that's something worth trying at the very least, to see if they're if this works, and to just try something new, get out of the usual arena environment. I would say, why not?
Yeah, why not? I think taking more chances is something I would greatly welcome for this company. I mean, the right sort of chances. I guess they do take plenty of creative chances all the time, but
what they should be doing is doing all the matches from Cleveland, and then they throw to this in Miami, and Hit Row comes out.
I think that would be perfect integration, but unfortunately, that's a different type of show. But I would say in terms of production, in terms of visual aesthetics, I think these shows have been pretty stale for quite a long time, Raw and SmackDown. So the ability to be able to see a wrestling match from a concert setting, I look forward to seeing what that looks like.
Going over to Japan, we talked about the Olympics, and it looks like on Thursday a decision will be made if Tokyo is going to go into yet another state of emergency. And the Japan Times was reporting on this, that it's expected that they will go into their latest state of emergency, which would go through August 22nd, meaning that the Summer Olympics would be taking place where the host city is under a state of emergency, which it just is mind-blowing. But I think everyone understands why these Olympics are happening. It is not because it's the safest operation. This is very much an economic decision. But looking just specifically to our world, that's once again going to put this Tokyo Dome show in question yet again. Will they be able to move forward with that? But it looks like a decision will officially be made on Thursday. All Japan just announced 2 more positives, Shuji Ishikawa and Black Menzuri, both testing positive. So, I mean, you look at the numbers, and I think they had just over 920 new cases on Wednesday in Tokyo, and they're looking at entering a state of emergency. So I think, like, you look at different places in the U.S., it's like the numbers have not gone down to nothing either. But it just seems like the whole optics of this, as you are about to bring all of these people in, athletes, coaches for the Olympics. I'm glad I'm not in Japan right now.
It's pretty wild. I mean, and I imagine history will look back at this particular set of Olympic Games with quite the interesting snapshot of this entire period throughout the entire world. So I don't doubt that the athletics themselves, the games themselves, the sporting events themselves will probably go off perfectly fine. Hopefully, like the athletes are vaccinated. Hopefully the athletes are able to keep safe. I think that is primarily the main concern here. Broadcast rights are fulfilled. Whatever ticket sales are occurring are able to be fulfilled as well. But it's wild.
Well, that's another issue here, is that if this state of emergency goes through, like, what impact is that going to have on live spectators? Will you have to reduce capacity? Will some even be able to have like that? That's the other question that probably will come out of this, if this decision is in fact made on Thursday.
Mm-hmm. The Olympic Games, like, going ahead, is obviously going to be a very different story from what a company like New Japan will be able to do. All the other sporting events that are kind of like on the shoulders of these Olympic Games are kind of having to watch from the sidelines to see what they can do. So we'll see if this Tokyo Dome event happens.
The elusive Tokyo Dome show that New Japan is bound and determined to run this year. Okay, this story is nuts. So MMAchunky.com ended up filing a Freedom of Information Act request with the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, and were able to learn that back in June of 2018 at UFC 225, Mike Jackson tested positive on Fight Night with marijuana in his system, and therefore his loss to CM Punk was overturned to a no contest. So CM Punk, his MMA record is now 0-1 with 1 no contest.
And do you think Punk knew that? Like, did the fighters themselves?
He had to actually sign off on this. So it was the parties involved would have. I'm just amazed that this was not a public disclosure by the Illinois Commission. It took a Freedom of Information Act request 3 years after the fact for this knowledge to come out. Like, this is a government entity, and this was a complete unknown fact. I mean, not like this changes the course of a MMA history or anything, but it's more so just very bizarre that this was so under the, not even on the radar.
Well, is it surprising that the fighters themselves didn't let the world know?
I mean, if you're Mike Jackson, I mean, what impetus do you have to really disclose that? And if you're Punk, I mean, this does not change the fact. I mean, this was a brutal fight. Punk did not look good in this fight. This is hardly I'm sure the guy takes it as a loss.
Exactly. You know, the fact that he didn't publicize this tells me that he doesn't care what it officially says in the rule book. He thinks of it as a loss, and I would imagine anybody who saw the fight would feel that way as well. I mean, we're talking about marijuana here, which is, a ridiculous thing to get a fight overturned for.
Which was another major story today. Nevada announcing that they are no longer testing for marijuana. Like, they are out of the business of testing and adjudicating marijuana offenses within the state. And you have to imagine that the whole story involving the Olympics right now probably played some kind of factor, and Nevada is taking that step forward.
There you go. So what does this mean? Is CM Punk ever coming back to MMA or what?
No, but today Aaron Bronstetter noted that it looks like Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler, they're trying to put a fight together. So after Nick Diaz has not fought in over 6 years, and look at that. They are paving the way. So it's not finalized, but they're trying to put Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz together for September.
Oh, he's going to have a fun training camp, I'm sure. Nick Diaz. No restrictions.
Let's end off this with Great American Bash thoughts from Tuesday night. I thought the show was excellent.
Great show. Really good show. I mean, I don't know if I would say takeover level, honestly. Like by takeover.
I would say the last 45 minutes of that show between the main event. I enjoyed this match between Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly more than the Stand and Deliver show. Stand and Deliver, tremendous first half, tremendous end. A lot in the middle I could have done without. It was just a marathon match that this was the more condensed version that I still totally got my value out of. Adam Cole goes over. We're kind of doing the 50-50 thing, but it was a tremendous match between these two. But the thing I'm going to remember on this show, the most memorable thing, was the segment with Hit Row that I thought, this is incredible.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Star-making performance for this group. If this group takes off, this is going to be the segment that I think everyone will look at as the breakthrough moment for this group.
Yeah. I'm honestly maybe surprised that it's gotten the reaction that it has. It seems like you said, John, it seems to be the biggest talk coming out of this show, more so than any of the matches. And from what I hear, it's not all positive. I know a lot of people might have not liked it, might have maybe wanted more of a physicality aspect attached to it, whether it be in the form of a run-in or something like that. I really enjoyed it simply as a great display of, I think, authentic talent outside of the actual in-ring product. To me, it having these four doing this sort of gimmick is one of the most authentic, I think, representations of hip hop culture that the WWE has ever had. We just went back and we go back and rewatch shows, and it's like, oh, man, Road Dogg and R-Truth rapping, to the ring, or it's, Men on the Mission and stuff like that. And maybe that stuff was cool to a certain audience at the time. But I just think that these guys are actually, in terms of pop culture, excellent, really cool and great representatives, I think, for professional wrestling.
I think it's such a great act that you can export to a non-fan. Like, I equate it way to when I will have something MMA related that I throw your way, that I feel I'm catering it to what is going to grab way. If it was the opposite and you were just completely done with pro wrestling, this would be a segment I would show to someone that watches wrestling never, doesn't even like it. And I think that this would be something that they would at least be intrigued by. Maybe it's not necessarily going to bring in a fan that's not really into wrestling, but to me, it's an act that is just so fresh. It's something you watch on WWE, and it just feels so cool beyond anything else that they are presenting. And I also really enjoy just watching the live aspect of this, that any one of these performers could have totally frozen up, and this would have been a disaster. Like, this was it was excellently performed. It is like so genuine in that this is not a group that is being having promos or raps dictated to them to just go out and recite clearly. Like, this is a level of performance that is very, very high level.
Yeah. It's not just wrestlers trying to, play the rap gimmick. Like, it feels like these guys, have had, and I think in the case of BFAB, like, and even Swerve, and maybe actually the rest of them too, I'm not even completely certain, but they all have as much of a passion for this other thing as they do for professional wrestling, seemingly, maybe even more. And that definitely comes across in the authenticity and the confidence in the performance. I would say, it's hard to say like how much Adonis, I know he produces the beats, he might actually DJ, so he's very much responsible for, I think, a whole lot in that group, but we didn't get as much of a sense of, the performance from him last night. But for the other three, to me, especially Top Dollar, to me, especially BFAB, I thought they just charismatically came across as such strong personalities.
So we will look forward to them on Raw one day.
God. Oh, yeah. Viking Raiders need a new set of decathlon partners.
I guess the other big thing on the show was the battery herself, Tegan Nox, returned fully charged and led to the title change. Io Shirai and Zoe Stark winning the tag titles. I was a bit surprised that they did the tag title switch, but with Tegan Nox coming back, obviously they're going to go right to her and Candice LeRae.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised given all the reports of her having matches, a dark match at Raw, and I thought that she would be called up right away, but seemingly, at least not for the time being, she'll be working with Candice LeRae, at least for the near future.
So I thought it was a really good show. I thought this was one of NXT's best presentations in quite some time. I really enjoyed it, especially that last hour. It was very, very strong stuff from the company. And next week they are doing Karrion Kross and Johnny Gargano. And I don't know what they are going to do with that match. I would imagine there's going to be tons of speculation that Kross his days as champion will be limited. But this feud to me is so perplexing. It's
a sort of a double heel feud with one person slightly leaning a bit more babyface while still trying to be a heel. In the end, I think with NXT, as long as you can guarantee good matches, I think the audience can be forgiving of a lot. And I think Johnny Gargano in a big match situation will really deliver. The fact that they are, using the WWE lines with Karrion Kross last night, I really do feel like they are trying to lead the audience to think that he has a chance of losing because he is going to move up to the main roster. And therefore, I think that's only a swerve. I think he retains and maybe drops it to somebody else at the next actual takeover.
Yeah, it feels like a strange time and a strange opponent to drop it to. And I definitely noted him lining out those objectives to probably misdirect people.
I love it.
It's
great. It's great to take advantage of the rumors.
That's the level you've got to be thinking at with your audience these days. Also worth noting, and God, did they remind you that tonight's show was brought to you by Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade.
Wow, that's a mouthful. So
big,
it's a light
big
beer
title sponsor, and my God, they just threw. Vic Joseph must have read this copy out 100 times on this show.
Well, I'd rather Vic Joseph say it than to have a wrestler say it in the midst of a promo, like the Chiking sandwich.
Wait a minute, Johnny, I've got a fourth objective. Pinning you 1, 2, 3 before I have my Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade because I'm going to enjoy it responsibly.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Well,
Can I also add Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade? You could not put 4 words together that make me want to vomit more than those combinations. Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade.
I mean, is a seltzer not inherently light to begin with? Branding.
This is lighter.
No, okay. Got it.
They lost me at Bud. So let's move on to Dynamite. We have all of the news up at postwrestling.com. You can check out all of that. And we have quite a bit of news coming out of Road Rager as AEW moved on to the James L. Knight Center in Miami, Florida.
Yeah, first show back on the road.
And this was a very lively crowd in Miami, a very hot crowd in Miami. We started
attendance figures.
I believe it was, WrestleTix had the latest update that they're of the tickets that were out.
3,738 at last check, and maybe that doesn't include walk-up, but that would be 80% capacity.
Yeah, that would be the tickets that were out in the market. So sold tickets, comps. So, I mean, it was a very, very healthy crowd that they had in Miami tonight, including 3 comps for Dan Lambert, Jorge Masvidal, and Amanda Nunes that we will get to. Cody Rhodes and QT Marshall started things off the South Beach strap match. So QT is 19-2 this year. That is his record.
That's pretty good. Wow. They're booking him really strong. Well, he is a leader of a faction in the end. Who? I mean, the two would be one against Cody and am I missing somebody else? Like, because I would say if you're only watching Dynamite, he doesn't look like he's being booked the strongest.
Well, he was in the tag match when Brock Anderson.
Oh yes,
his debut.
So he lost that. That was only his second loss this year. Wow.
Well, he had the match with Cody, and then that tag match.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is like when you just watch Dynamite, you don't get the sense that he's being booked that strong. But I guess when you include all the
that's the point. I think he's a very deceptive 19-2 record. So
yes.
I don't think AEW could get away with just quietly switching someone's record to include a no contest if they tested positive for marijuana.
Yeah, I don't know if they're really testing for marijuana.
We had Nick Comoroto and Aaron Solo in one corner. Arn Anderson is out with Cody. And this is where we see Dan Lambert, Jorge Masvidal, and Amanda Nunes. And Masvidal must have he was like in Vegas, like on Tuesday. And then boom, he's in Miami here. So got some FaceTime here. And when they went to them the second time, you knew, okay, there's going to be some kind of angle to come. Solo was distracting, so Dustin Rhodes came down. A lot of whipping from QT. Cody's back looked just tremendous for the flight home. QT gets yanked into the post and gets busted open. And then the lights go out, and then they just come back on. And JR casually notes, we've had some issues during the day. By the end of the big angle, I love this. This was a great utilization of a perceived electrical issue. Power outage.
I'm sure power outages like actually occur in these scenarios, but I don't think
with this heat in Miami, this was completely believable to me that the power generator was being affected here.
Yeah, but I would also assume like places like this have like backup upon backup upon backup. So whatever, it's like it's a way to tell a story. I thought it was utilized well.
We had wasn't it at a WrestleMania? There was some big show where the lights went out. This was not all that long ago.
Yeah, I'm sure it happened. But I mean, I also like the cameras wouldn't go out too.
Dude, the Super Bowl had this problem a few years ago where the power went out.
Right.
The Super Bowl. So this is a completely viable technical malfunction. Cody is choking him on the top turnbuckle, goes for a top rope Rana. QT counters with a power bomb. The gimmick here is that you have to touch all 4 corners. So QT comes back with a draping diamond cutter, but can only hit 3. Cody just stands up to all of the whips and fires back and hits his Red Bastille flying head scissors that he's now incorporating. hits a Cody cutter. Arn gives him the throat slash. He hits 3 turnbuckles and then low blows QT. QT comes back, spits in Cody's face, and Cody hits 3 crossroads and then hits all 4 turnbuckles. Cody is your winner, and QT falls to 19-3.
Oh, 19-3. Devastating. Yeah, honestly, it felt like this match, it felt like this feud was already done. And to me, the only reason why you would maybe think about doing a match like this on this show is to just have Cody have a big win in front of a crowd, being the first one out there. And, maybe there's something to that. He sort of is the franchise guy. And I think the crowd still really likes him, despite maybe some missteps in recent booking or recent promo work. But the match I found entertaining. Strap matches I think are difficult to make compelling, but I thought these two managed well. A lot of stiff-looking whipping, some good near finishes, and I thought a pretty dramatic end with QT spitting in Cody's face and then the 3 crossroads with Cody even doing a bit of a low blow, which, he always definitely straddles that line between babyface and heel. But tonight, to me, he felt like a very clear babyface. I will say I felt like QT's blade job was pretty unnecessary, especially given that it was the opening match. I know that they feel like these strap matches need to achieve a certain level of violence, but I don't think it added any drama to the match.
I agreed. I didn't think the blood meant anything in the match. I think you should save those, especially in AEW. Breaking news. Your Stanley Cup champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Oh, wow. Sorry, Montreal.
Yeah, you had a good run. Much better than Toronto did.
Mm-hmm.
After the match, we go to the back, and from earlier in the day, Sean Spears is talking about his chair shot to Sammy Guevara being the second greatest chair shot he's thrown in AEW. Then a chair gets thrown from off camera into Spears, and it's Guevara who says, "Gotcha, bitch," and this is far from over.
No Jade Cargill, so yeah, Sammy got the bitch card this week.
You had to pace them out on this show. So it looks like we are going to get Guevara and Sean Spears. A week removed. Did you, on Wednesday, I completely understood MJF winning when he is in the more important program with Jericho. I also can see, a lot of arguments that, Sammy was front and center after Double or Nothing. Could he have afforded the win? And MJF affording the loss. And I guess you can go back and forth on either of them. Do you feel strongly one way or the other of where Guevara is right now coming off that match last week?
I mean, I really feel like they made the right decision. MJF is in the principal feud against, he is the leader of the faction going up against the other leader of the faction. I think there is time for Sammy to achieve that same level of importance. And I really don't think he loses all that much through the loss. Could he have gained a lot more through it? I think in the end, I don't think it really matters. They both won, in my opinion. And I think the opinions of all the fans, because that was one of the best matches of the year.
Kenny Omega and Don Callis come out, and this was our first really great back-to-crowd moment. The crowd erupts in a chant of "You got fired" at Don Callis. And they literally had to stop and acknowledge it. And this, to me, was the moment that it was the first time it felt like we are back, was this chant.
Mm-hmm. Getting impromptu chants from the crowd. Well, there was another moment later on with a fan interaction.
Oh, yes. The Idiot Brigade was also unleashed on Wednesday night.
Definitely reminded us that crowds were back, but Callis had to it's definitely fun to watch wrestlers react to chants that they don't expect, and I think that is one of the great skills and tests of a great improviser in pro wrestling, to see how they can react to whether it be a what chant, or in this case Don Callis reacting to these "You got fired" chants.
Don Callis lists off all the people that Kenny has beaten. There is no one left for him to beat. This crowd erupts in chants of cowboy shit. It's getting so loud, and they're just dismissing them as they continue on, and then it's deafening. "We want Hangman." I was like, my God, if his music played right now, this arena would just erupt. Instead, the Dark Order comes out, and Evil Uno enters the ring as our Canadian content was at an all-time high.
Oh, he's probably watching the game backstage.
I bet he did, yeah. This culminates in Kenny Omega asking Evil Uno, what is the capital of Thailand? And Evil Uno gives it a thought. He is kicked in the balls, and Kenny says, it's Bangkok, baby.
Did you like that?
It's all I'm saying is the reaction 98% of people had is exactly what they want you to react to with this Kenny Omega character. They want this guy. They want you to roll your eyes at this character.
Yes.
And that was achieved here. So they brawl. The Dark Order is all involved. The Good Brothers are out. And then Hangman runs down to make the save. He fights off Gallows and Anderson. And then there is this moment. Kenny is staggering in the ring. And Hangman is on the edge, turns around. And we're teasing the buckshot lariat. But instead, Page enters the ring. They look at one another. They meet. And then Gallows goes onto the apron. Page goes after him. And Kenny takes his title and runs. This was an awesome segment. They are sitting on this unbelievable program. They have something magic at their hands with this program and with crowds that are so into this. I mean, this had to be the greatest reassurance of how amped they were for this Hangman Page presence to take out Kenny Omega. This was, I mean, how could you not be excited for when they pulled the trigger on this match and just let it simmer? And it feels it's almost at a boiling point now already.
That is the challenge now. Can they keep this thing as hot, if not even, or to make it even hotter come September? When I would say for the better part of like the past couple months, Paige is, rightfully like been kind of lingering, on the undercard, being a part of the Dark Order, not really being involved too much in the title picture. But I really didn't have too much doubt that they'd be able to like bring him back up to a boil really at any time that they wanted to. And it was absolutely apparent today. Like, they didn't even have to do much. Like, what did they have to do? Last week, it was a segment with the Dark Order coming out to confront Kenny. A little thing of like, Paige walking into the back saying, why did you guys do that? A Twitter user writing a great recap thread that certainly I'm sure helped this whole thing as well. But then tonight, like the live crowd returning and just the simple mention and the tease of Hangman Page and that wonderful visual of him about to execute that buckshot lariat that we all remember from that tag match. I thought this was really well paced, and man, they gave us part of the moment. They give us the anticipation of the moment of him eventually hitting that buckshot lariat to Kenny, and they held back, and I can't wait now for the 2 months.
Great segment, really great, and so much better with 3,700 people chanting along with this. It just felt like a really, really important feud, and it's your top title program. That's the reaction you want to have, where you're excited for a match, and now it's just peaking for the right moment for the match. Jim Ross had a sit-down interview with Ethan Page and Darby Allin, and Jim Ross, he is disgusted and finds it sad that these two want to end the other's career. How did we get here? Darby says, I accomplished in my first year what it took Ethan 12 years to do. Ethan, you got married, you had kids, you never left your hometown. While I set out, I lived in my car to make it big. You were a big fish in a small pond, and I got to AEW before you. Paige says, yeah, you skipped the line because I plucked you from obscurity. You learned from me. I brought you into this industry. I'm going to take you out next week in the coffin match. And JR says, I do not have a peaceful or easy feeling about this.
I thought this was an excellent segment. As always, I think JR is great in these. He helps us set the scene and makes things feel really real in a way that I don't think any of their other backstage interviewers can. It never feels like JR is acting when he's doing these sit-down interviews. He knows exactly what the aim of the story is. I find him incredibly sharp in these scenarios, which, might not always be the case, unfortunately, when it comes to the commentary. But in these segments, he is fantastic and the best guy for the job. Ethan Page was great here. A ton of intensity, great presence and delivery. this really kind of like, elevated this singles feud.
This is we talk about this in these situations for a lot of these performers. Like, yes, Ethan Page, he had a lot of success in Impact Wrestling with Josh Alexander. This is the biggest match of his career next week. I don't think that is hyperbole. And I think this is going to be a very violent match between these two.
Yeah, I do expect maybe a little bit of blood for this one. But they drew upon their history really well, and I think they conveyed it really well.
FTR and Wardlow with Tully Blanchard against Jake Hager, Santana, and Ortiz with Conan. And Hager gets the tag, and he just runs wild. I think this guy has really found his rhythm now, like who this Jake Hager character is. It's like he's the maniac musclehead of the group. Like that totally is the role. I think he finally I think it all clicked during that freezer scene with Wardlow at Double or Nothing.
I think him working as a babyface has made his in-ring style a whole lot more exciting too, because he's now definitely increased the speed of his style. He's not just a power guy, but he actually wrestles really fast. And it's really exciting to watch when you compliment him with Proud and Powerful. He fits in really well.
They got control of Santana during the break. There was a dragon suplex jackknife cover by FTR. Ortiz kicked out. Hager's in with the ankle lock. And then Wardlow gets the tag, so we have the big showdown with the monsters. And Hager is able to get an ankle lock on Wardlow when Tully distracts. And then FTR is in. Hager turns his back and allows Wardlow to push him into FTR's big rig, and then Wardlow gets the pin on Jake Hager. So it looks like we are just going to be going, not just having showdowns with some of the pairings of the Pinnacle and Inner Circle, but multiple matches, which is something AEW does not do a whole lot of rematches, or they at least spread them all out. But it seems that Hager and Wardlow we have probably not seen the last chapter of.
Yeah. And each one, though, has been, at least the first two have been very different. So I look forward to seeing what the third one will be. I mean, we criticize all the time in WWE when we watch Raw that these are like unofficial best of fives or best of sevens. And every match is the same. There is no difference in, I think, stipulation or anticipation. The results ultimately don't matter a whole lot. These ones are, I would say, I can remember every single Wardlow and Hager match up until this point, and I can tell you that logically one builds on from the other, so that it's like the two of them have one apiece, and then you have a rubber match, and really that's typically about it. So each one, as long as they can make them feel important and different, I'm okay with it.
Maybe Wardlow could have accused Jake Hager of testing positive for marijuana after their cage fight. So it didn't count.
Ooh, yeah, that would be well, he'd have to file what do you call FI.
Wardlow and Tully go and file a Freedom of Information Act request, and they learn that on fight night, Jake Hager was with Conan and got high.
Quite the story, yes.
Conan gets into the ring with the Mad Ball. Wardlow no-sells it, and then Tully chop blocks Conan as the Pinnacle exits.
Man, I'm surprised to see like physicality with all these guys. Tully and
I think this
Conan.
was about the extent of how they were. Did you hear Tully recently when he talked about the match he did a couple of months back, that he felt that for like a month after?
I don't doubt that at all. Yeah, he's pretty nuts, I have to say. To do this at his age, maybe as nuts as Dan Lambert taking that blackout. God.
I will say I love their personalities. I don't want to see Tully and Conan involved in any kind of wrestling, no matter like hidden in tags. I don't need that. They are great on the mic. That's all I need from those two.
I think last week was okay, granted, Vicky Guerrero is not the same as Conan or Tully, okay, but I think even the AEW audience has their fill of like the non-wrestler being involved in a match, as protected as they may be.
The bar is high for a match on Dynamite. Like, it's really high. And I think last week's the tag match, like, that was well below the quality that Dynamite produces each week. I think that was very apparent.
And it, to me, exposes, like, the weaknesses of these guys. Whereas seeing these two talk, they feel like the top level stars in that quote unquote, talking division.
Yeah.
So why ruin that aura?
Carl Anderson cut a promo on Jon Moxley, who is coming back next week, and they built this all around Moxley still having the IWGP US title. And we had plenty of New Japan footage, and Carl Anderson wants to get the US title and bring it back when he goes to New Japan. And that is our setup for next week when they beat up Jon Moxley. And this will be our first appearance of Jon Moxley since the pay-per-view.
Yeah, even though we've seen, plenty of like New Japan crossover at this point, or we've seen plenty of Carl Anderson in AEW Dynamite, seeing like New Japan footage of Carl Anderson on Dynamite still feels incredibly novel and still feels incredibly cool. And for some reason,
they gave you a big reason, like Carl Anderson versus Jon Moxley. Yeah, on paper, that's cool. You could get away with just Moxley's back next week. This is who he's facing. In 2 minutes, they gave you the reason Carl Anderson wants this match. There is something he is fighting for. And suddenly you take this match that, okay, Moxley's return has this interest. Now we have his return plus a story on top of it that they're fighting for something. And you accomplish that in 2 minutes.
I think for me, it like rebrands Carl Anderson in a really positive light. Like to me, the Good Brothers are still very much kind of coming off of, I would say, honestly, the stench of like that WWE run where neither of them are taken very seriously. This reminds us of the Machine Gun Carl Anderson, the guy who, went to the G1 finals and looked incredibly impressive doing it. So I'm looking forward to Moxley versus Anderson. To me, like this will probably play into some of the New Japan Strong shows that are coming up.
He missed a great ending line of saying, the machine gun is coming firing at you, and you don't have a shield to protect you.
Wow, that is wonderful. Please send that, tweet that.
Come on, Carl.
Somebody.
MJF and Chris Jericho are out for the face-to-face standoff, and we got 45 minutes into the show where we were reminded of when fans come back, the great fans come back, but so do the idiots. As this fan, I was amazed he got as close as he did. This dude got onto the stage and right up to the ring when a security guy grabbed him. Jericho got in on it as well. And dude, the guy that was quickest of all of them was MJF on his feet, who immediately just cut a promo, tearing this dude down, and like clockwork went into the promo. I was very impressed with MJF, who thought so quick on his feet, and he was not rattled for a second.
Both, absolutely, yeah. Like you said, John, one of the unfortunate aspects of, I think, fans returning is this. Like, you would hope by this point, man, why would anybody ever try this? Maybe part of it is the attention. Look at the fact that we are talking about it right now. But God, I hope this person never gets to attend a wrestling show again. Certainly, at least not in AEW. He made everybody look bad. But, again, it is interesting to see how these performers react with these kind of very unnatural situations. And here you have perhaps the two sharpest guys in the entire company who, I think if you're going to trust anybody with an unpredictable situation, it would be these two. MJF did not skip a beat. He was ready to just do his job, complete professional. Jericho, you can tell he was definitely rattled a little bit more. But at the same time, I think, the look on his face was not necessarily just him reacting to what had happened, but for him to think, how can I use this in my comeback? What line can I give out there to make mention of this and move on?
Yeah, and listen, it goes back forever, the tradition of, you jump the ring, it's very much, you are putting yourself into the line of fire. I think performers have to be very careful in this day and age of, I know it's drummed into you that it's like fans are fair game that jump the barricade. But if I was Tony Khan or if I was any wrestling promoter, I would be telling my performers, listen, we have our security. Mm-hmm. If they get right up to you, of course you have to defend yourself. But if not, don't put yourself into that situation. You don't know how this person is going to respond legally. What could happen if they get injured? Don't invite that headache into your life.
Maybe they have a weapon, you have no idea. You're absolutely right. I know it's a very old school mentality to teach the fan
I have no sympathy if a fan gets gets hit by a performer. I'm just saying for the performer's sake, you just don't know what could go wrong, and then suddenly you're involved in this.
There's that video out there with like Triple H when like a fan jumped the ring like in the 90s, right? With like a Steve Austin match of some sort. And these guys just like brutalized this fan. And by all accounts, you know, the fan probably deserved it. But that video making the rounds today will not make the company look good. And yeah, it's a very different time. So perhaps, you know, better to err on the side of, letting the security do their job.
Yes. The spirit of Eddie Guerrero was in Chris Jericho tonight. So they just go right into their segment. They're at this table, and I guess there was a light Y2J chant as Jericho informed them Y2J is dead, and he should have let the fat bastard into the ring to kick MJF's ass.
Yeah.
And that got a pop from the crowd.
You know, it's like if you don't address the situation, I mean, it would have been fine, but I think you would have like, hey, it's a giant elephant in the room, and it would have felt like you were hiding something.
And the fans at home saw it too on TV, like they could see what had happened.
You address the situation so that everybody can move on from it. We shelve it from our thoughts, and we can move on with the rest of the show.
So the idea is that MJF is going to lay out a bunch of parameters for Jericho to get another match with him. Jericho will accept any stipulation. He will get in front of a Mack truck. He will go into a lake infested with piranhas, or even have sex with MJF's mother. Again.
The again was like, okay, like the sex.
They got the double pop out of that line.
Yeah, sex with your mother is very much like, okay, yeah, haha, like funny fifth grade. But like the again definitely kind of added a bit more like nuance and sophistication to it. I thought it was the crowd ate it up.
MJF brings up Jericho's feud with Moxley and how he made Moxley go through the gauntlet of all the Inner Circle members. So he's going to take that blueprint and make it better. He's a fan of Greek mythology, and he mentions Jericho not being in the key demo any longer. This did not get a reaction from the crowd, and I think that was very interesting.
So what does he mean? 18 to 49?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I think honestly, I would think that to an AEW crowd, that line would work. It did not work here. Like, this did not get any reaction. And there were several like big zingers on this show that totally landed with this crowd. This was not one of them.
That line I think would have worked really well on Twitter, you know, to like an audience that could sit down and actually think about it. When you're there to react live, I think this was an audience that reacted a lot more to the I'm going to have sex with your mother type of humor.
To these fans, they're like, Showbuzz Daily, the era's over.
Yes.
So he talks about the labors of Hercules. So Jericho's going to have to go through 4 opponents, and it sounds like there will be stipulations attached to them as well in order for him to get to MJF. And Jericho agrees, stating, if I can't beat them, maybe I don't belong in AEW. And Jericho is going to ruin MJF's life. He signs the contract, and MJF ends by saying, where I'm from, in Plainview, Long Island, a deal is not completed until we shake hands. So Jericho reluctantly shakes hands, pulls MJF into a Judas effect, and MJF goes down and sells it with his eyes open.
He's unconscious, and, you know, you forget to close your eyes sometimes. Yeah, I thought this was a really great segment. You know, like it feels like in this episode, I mean, they kind of called it like an official season premiere type of thing. And it really felt that way because maybe even not so much of a season. I would say maybe a partially season premiere, but like in some ways it felt like a great go home show for a lot of these programs. In this case, it is just the start of this kind of long gauntlet for Chris Jericho. But it definitely puts the focus at the end destination for a lot of these different programs, and putting the two of them in the ring together is simply doing what part of what they do best and talking. You know, how could this segment fail? And it really did not.
I would say though, instead of a go home show, I think this was the leaving home show.
Yes.
Because we're going home in 4 weeks.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but you know, again, like. I thought both of them recovered incredibly well after a really kind of strange, unpredictable start and proceeded, you know, to
They had a good segment. They had a very good segment together. Tony Schiavone interviews Britt Baker and Rebel in the back. And Britt Baker just cut this promo. She said last week was a match no one wanted to see. Vicky Guerrero is a senior citizen. Rebel got hurt. And Tony Khan should feel terrible for granting that match to Vicky Guerrero, all in the name of getting Andrade. One of her best lines was, Rebel's knee exploded and I almost died. All for Andrade. So enjoy your blood money. Maybe next week, AEW can run in Saudi Arabia. And the reaction to this line.
Wonderful.
This one landed.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I almost wish she was able to do this in front of the crowd. But I mean, you heard the crowd, either way.
Quite the line to throw out there. And she is going to put Nyla into obscurity when she defends the title against her in 2 weeks. This will be on the second week of Fyter Fest.
I really like the line. Now, at the same time, it really kind of demands, strong. If AEW is ever put into a situation where their morals are going to be in question in exchange for, I guess, I don't know, making a lot of money, these are the types of things that can come back to them. The way Taz's, what is it, sloppy shop line would come back eventually to haunt them. But they're fun and they get great reactions. So maybe that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, it was a line that I'm surprised they went there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, from what it seems like they're given a great deal of autonomy. I'm sure Tony Khan had to okay this one as well, but it was trash talk for an audience that definitely understands these references. So she did great.
Matt Sydal and Andrade El Idolo with Vicky in the corner. Andrade wrestled in pinstripe pants. He
was dressed up as a DC character called Black Mask. That was the mask at the top.
Oh, tell me about Black Mask. Does he have any relation to Kang?
I don't believe so. No, it's a different universe. But you have seen the latest edition of Loki, I take it?
No, I have not. But was that a key to episode 5?
Well, I mean, it's just a rumored name attached to the series.
Okay.
So,
I'm
MCU
almost
later. MCU later, everybody, tomorrow night.
All your answers. He hit the double moonsault, landing the second one. They went through the break. There were chants for Eddie as Andrade. He did the Three Amigos during the break and then teased the frog splash. But Sydal stops him and hits the Meteora. And Andrade makes the comeback, double knees, and his finisher, which is a hammerlock flatliner called El Idolo, for the win. And Excalibur called this very businesslike, which I would agree with. This match was very businesslike. And then Andrade hyperextended the arms of Sydal for the post-match attack, which it seemed like this match he very much played to the crowd, and they almost did it expecting him to be a big babyface here, while at the end, keeping it clear, he is still a heel. That's how I took it.
To me, the Vicky attachment was very much him as a heel, but yeah, maybe they did it expecting a big reaction. I think overall, so I wasn't really impressed with Andrade here. I thought the match was a bit of a disappointment, considering that this was a very, to me, Andrade's big match coming out of WWE in front of AEW, in front of an audience, and with Matt Sydal, a very capable performer, you would think, for their style. But I thought it looked a little uncoordinated at parts. In fact, at times, I really felt like Sydal looked the better of the two. But, ultimately, one night isn't going to affect a whole lot. More important is the overall presentation of Andrade, and he comes across, again, the look is incredible. I think having an entourage with him, with Vicky and this other assistant now, makes him look like a big deal. And with a sustained push and a big matchup with another name in AEW, he's already money.
Yeah, I mean, this was not, to me, this was not a home run. It also wasn't a strikeout. It was sort of businesslike. I think Excalibur hit the nail on the head with this. I don't think I'm going to think about this match after tonight.
I also have to say, Eddie Guerrero is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Everybody I know loves Eddie Guerrero, but we need some communication in the back about who's going to pay tribute to Eddie on one particular show. Because on this show, it was Man, we had like, what is it, Santana doing the Three Amigos, and then like it was like, it felt like the next match afterwards, it was like Andrade here doing signaling for the Frog Splash. I would give it to the guy who's being managed by his wife. So maybe that's just a bit of a communication thing.
Well, and if you are going like the heel route, I would not be giving him those spots.
Yeah, that's true too. Mm-hmm.
I really think they probably thought, like, in Miami, like, especially last week's promo, like, it really did design it like Andrade was going to get, like, a hero's welcome tonight. I didn't get that sense he did. But there you go. A business-like win for Andrade. They aired a video package for Christian Cage and Matt Hardy, the showdown that has been 23 years in the making, with many matches among those 23 years.
I was going to say, like, have they never wrestled before?
Just because they have... it would be like you and I doing a podcast next week and saying, this has been 15 years in the making.
Yes.
With a few along the way. Christian tried to cut a very serious promo at the end. He said, get on my level or get the hell out of my way. And they're going to have their match next week. I think they're in a position where these two really need to come out and have like a phenomenal match together, because I don't think this is a match that people are all that interested in. Matt Hardy needs a big performance here.
I agree. And I think it needs to be a different type of performance than what he has been trying to do in some of his singles matches in the past, which is, to me, feels like he's been trying to like keep up with maybe like the style of today. It feels like he's trying to, or even like recapture the Matt Hardy of old in doing like high risk spots. And I don't want to see like a 40-something-year-old Matt Hardy do that. I want to see the two of them take more of the Christian route. And that is, use their veteran senses to be able to pace the match, do things that are very different, that the younger generation isn't able to do, that they might be able to do. And then maybe throw in like one big risky thing in there if you really want to. But I personally, I'm hoping for that kind of elevated, more educated style from these two. I was not a fan of really... I thought Christian sounded good, but man, I'm just not a fan of this like Money Mac character. It's comedy that's trying to be funny that's not really landing to me. It's a stable that lacks focus. And I would say like one of the criticisms going into next week is that like you want to try to avoid this seeming like it's a mid-card WWF feud being transported to AEW, who I think has done a great job of making their matches with their original guys feel incredibly fresh and new. So to have just kind of this match in there, they're gonna have to show us that, like, how can you make this fresh?
Shivani is with Arn Anderson in the ring, and he talks about the win from Cody tonight, Brock, his son, recently debuting. Everything's going great, Arn. Arn says how much he's missed the fans. The lights go out again, and now everyone, I think the light bulb goes off. And when the light bulb in lights, I was trying to be more philosophical there than I needed to be. The lights go on, and there, in the ring, is one Tommy End, and the place just loses their mind. Black mass to Arn. Then Cody's there. He eats one, and the place goes crazy as we are introduced to Malakai Black.
Malakai Black, yeah, name change.
Awesome look.
Great look, yeah. So what? He's kind of got like a bit of a painted part of his face with the one contact lens in the eye that he kept.
Yes. He got hit with the black mass.
What?
He's bruised his face. Someone hit him with his own move. That's what it looks like.
What I want to know is like the eye is still okay. Well, I was gonna say like. Is the eye still... I was going to ask you if the eye is still a reference to him getting his eye ripped out by Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy in the stairs. But he kind of answers that for us, because like earlier in the day, he put out a really well-produced video on his Instagram. And Josiah Williams also stars in this. But, it's like him inside an insane asylum. And the whole point of it is that like he's kind of using the insane asylum as a metaphor for the WWE. They even make reference to the eye where like it's hard to explain. So I recommend everybody watch it. But like Black is basically saying, I lost this. I had my eye injury from being shoved into the steps, and the people at the insane asylum are trying to convince him that that was all a dream. It didn't happen, and you actually lost it in a fight. Whereas Black is trying to convince them that no, that was real. So I mean, that was, I would say, the introduction of the Malakai Black character. It's clear he's putting a whole lot of thought into this, and in AEW, where he'll be able to completely utilize a great deal of freedom to execute that idea, I'm really looking forward to it. A feud with Cody, what a great way to debut.
It's a big start for him. I think when he recently announced that sponsorship deal with Hayabusa, I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense that you be in a company where you can get an outside sponsor like that. So I thought that was like notable last week when he announced that.
And obviously was able to get that no compete clause shortened.
Yes. So he comes in. I mean, solid debut. Like the place, they went nuts for this surprise, and I thought it was a real clever way with the lights to do that.
Given he is the lights out dark room character, yeah, I think it makes total sense. And
so is Brock Anderson gonna seek revenge?
Brock Anderson versus
Tommy or Malakai Black?
You would have to, right? I mean, and I don't think that's going to be very good for poor Brock.
You should have Malakai Black like murder Brock Anderson. Like I think Cody and Malakai Black, like that, in theory, that should be, I would say all out, but I could see that being on a Rampage or something before.
Sorry, Cody and Black?
Cody and Black, do you think that they do that before? Like that could be the pay-per-view, but I think they could do that earlier.
Yeah, I think it's a little too long to drag out, but yeah, like Black's debut being on that Rampage, I think that alone is big. So maybe you can, wait for the Cody match for a little bit longer, but maybe they want to do the debut maybe at one of the Fyter Fest or something. But, being involved in a feud with Cody automatically tells us that they are going to take him seriously. And I think for Cody, like, it's going to be a bit of a rebound from the QT feud. What do you think? Like, do you think he'll get booed as a heel? Or do you think Cody could possibly get booed as a heel in this? Like, who will the crowd choose?
I think that it's... I think you can tell the story as intended, where you can have this Malakai Black character be the villain, but I think at the same time, I think people are going to be blown away when this guy is just let loose in the ring. Like, remember some of those matches he had with Cesaro? It's like, with the handcuffs off, I think this guy is going to excel with many of these performers. It's like he has a very fan-friendly style.
Mm-hmm. Just a note here from Rustin in the chat room, who points out a Mike Johnson report stating that PWInsider.com is told that when Tommy End was moved to the main roster several years ago, the company failed to update his contract from the standard 30-day non-compete that NXT level talents received to the 90-day non-compete that main roster performers are given. So what can only be described as a bad clerical error allowed End to be free and clear in time for the first episode of Dynamite on the road. Interesting. Okay, so perhaps not a negotiation, but clerical error.
Earlier tonight, they showed this segment with Ricky Starks with his own security, noting he is not medically cleared, but he's got the FTW title match next week. Team Taz is out, and Taz calls this embarrassing. And Starks says that in his world, in FTW, the W stands for wife, as in your wife, Brian. And Brian Cage attacks security, and this is our angle setting up the title match for next week in Texas.
Did you like this one? On the scale of, sex with your mom to you're no longer in the 18 to 49 demo to the W in FTW stands for wife.
This was kind of a low-hanging fruit.
This one, it was a bit of a thinker, too, because you're going to have to assume what the audience knows what FTW stands for. I don't think in AEW they ever said that. It's still a very much an ECW reference.
Yeah, you take it for granted that everyone knows what that means. I would imagine most know it, but you know what? If we're talking about an average viewer, I don't think an average viewer is even aware that this title exists, to be honest.
Perhaps, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Blade and the Bunny versus Orange Cassidy and Chris Statlander, our first mixed tag on Dynamite. Aubrey Edwards is searching the Blade and finds the brass knuckles. So the match begins. Blade trips Chris from the floor, and we go through the break. Cassidy does a spinning DDT, and then Bunny shoves Orange Cassidy off the top. Statlander knocks her down, and then hits the Area 451 onto the Blade. So we did have intergender spots in the match, but the rules were still that the male competitors had to be in together, and same for the females.
Did we have any like male offense on female?
We did not.
Yeah, right.
No. It was pretty much limited to, like, this was the big spot in the match with Blade and Chris Statlander. Cassidy went for the cover, but Bunny pulled him out. Blade's got the brass knuckles, and as Orange Cassidy is going for the orange punch, he's nailed with the knucks, and then Chris Statlander tags him so that when they go to pin Cassidy, he's not the legal man, and Statlander shoves the Bunny into the Blade and proceeds to hit the Big Bang Theory, pinning the Bunny.
I found this to be like a very sports entertainment type of match, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I didn't really love it on this particular Dynamite product, but I think the point was to elevate Statlander to a higher level using Orange Cassidy, and I thought that was very successful. They both received tremendous ovations. She got the big win here, so crowd was very responsive to the baby faces.
Yeah, it's like we have the mixed tags that we see in WWE, and it's very clear, like, they do not want to mix the men with the women. I think with like your AEW audience, when you're presenting them with this, that is the appeal that I think they want to see. So this match almost felt like, how can we tease it and give you one spot, but we don't really want to, we don't want to go the intergender route. And it just made this match, to me, it was like, I don't know what the purpose of doing it is if you don't want to go the whole way, which I think that's the appeal. Like, the audience wants to see like a minute-long sequence with Cassidy and the Bunny, for instance, or Statlander and the Blade. And if you're not going to do that, it's, I don't know, to me, I'm watching this with like a different perspective than with a WWE match where it's very clear what they're doing. And I think the AEW audience, I think they're just more used to, you have a match like this, it's intergender.
I think there's an expectation that AEW is, a company that transplants concepts and ideas directly from the indies to a national stage. And, for a company that's able to like showcase a lot of blood, really like crazy amounts of blood, and really like barbed wire exploding death matches, it's, you wonder if they would draw the line anywhere when it comes to intergender matches. And clearly, like, they're still not comfortable. They are being presented on primetime cable television to potential advertisers. And, for better or worse, this is apparently where they draw the line. If they presented the match as you said, John, I know the audience probably listening to this show will have no issues with it. Like, I think most of us are able to understand pro wrestling as a performance art, as a dance, between performers, whether they're male or female. And we would be able to respect and admire these matches that way. But unfortunately, maybe they don't seem ready yet. But you know what? I'm just recalling right now. Didn't they do like Riho and Kenny in a match? Was that on the cruise?
They did an intergender match on the cruise.
Right.
That didn't air on Dynamite.
I see. Okay. But that was like online or something, like on YouTube?
Wasn't it a tag?
Yeah, it was a tag. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the first official intergender tag match on Dynamite.
Mixed tag. They never called it intergender.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's still a seal to be broken at some point.
The Jungle Boy got a trophy for his 50th victory. This trophy has to be destroyed. It's just a question of when and who.
Sure. Yeah.
How many photos did these 3 photographers need of Jungle Boy holding this trophy?
Well, maybe close up, maybe a wide shot, maybe of the trophy itself. Yeah. But I thought it was a really nice, simple way of keeping Jungle Boy in the audience's memory, to celebrate Jungle Boy, to make him feel important without him cutting a promo or having a match this week.
Tony is then interviewing Dan Lambert, Jorge Masvidal, and Amanda Nunes. And Lambert takes the microphone, and I think everyone knew what we were getting here. Dan Lambert acting out every dream he has had since his Impact run, that I'm sure he has woken up just hoping for the day he could get this promo in front of a huge crowd in Miami. He puts over Masvidal as the BMF champion, and Amanda Nunes, the 2-division champion and greatest female fighter of all time. This is good, like, FaceTime for Masvidal and Nunes. He said,
do you feel like it was beneficial to the two of them? Like,
I don't think it hurt. You know, I don't know if they're the ones you remember at the end of this, but I don't think it hurt. And clearly, like, they saw this as valuable because, as I said, Masvidal was, like, in Vegas for all the UFC stuff as of, like, Tuesday. He was just on the last Embedded episode with Dustin Poirier. So this was obviously important enough that they wanted to get him here. So Nunes and him were here for this angle. Lambert says, I agreed to come here, but I never agreed to an interview or endorsing this show. So he's got the mic, and this guy just saunters over and takes over the ring. He's in the ring and says, I have better things to do. I got to get to Vegas where Dustin Poirier is going to knock out Conor McGregor again. This was interesting because I think that line was totally designed like this wrestling crowd are all going to be McGregor fans. And it sounded a lot more mixed. Like, yeah, I think a lot of people are rooting for Dustin Poirier to win this fight on Saturday. So I didn't take that to be like this big heel line that they may have intended.
No, if anything, to some people, it kind of baby faces him. But because like Poirier is definitely the baby face in that match.
I think to a lot of people, he would definitely be the baby face. I mean, you have your McGregor super fans, but I mean, the odds makers, they are on Dustin Poirier's side. He said he was skeptical of coming here because AEW sucks. If I wanted some great wrestling, I'd pull out the VHS and watching Gordon Soley calling some real wrestling, some Eddie Graham, some Dusty Rhodes. This product's unwatchable. And let's be honest, this industry has gone downhill since the late 90s. Dude, this was, to me, the acknowledgement that we would love to use a Jim Cornette, but we are never, ever going to use a Jim Cornette. But this was great. I just took this as like this opportunity. We've got Dan Lambert. He's a great promo. Let's do a fun segment. And then Lance Archer comes out to confront him and lays out Dan Lambert with the blackout.
Oh, he was awesome. He was just tremendous.
This guy's great. If you missed his Impact run, and I'm sure many people did during that era of Impact, I mean, this guy was just, what a find on Impact's behalf. That this guy has probably dreamed of cutting wrestling promos and got to do it in Impact for a great run and got to do it here.
It's the fact that he not only can he talk like this, which I would say even if he was not, didn't have the real life credentials that he does, if he was just simply a guy who was able to come out and talk like that, I would really enjoy it. But it's the fact that he has his real life credentials and that he is incredibly relevant in the sport of mixed martial arts up until this weekend in the biggest fight perhaps in the UFC this year. This makes him, I think, such a valuable commodity for professional wrestling. And, I would love to see him get involved a lot more. I was, in fact, really disappointed when Lance Archer came out. Because to me, it was such a simple end to the segment. And I wanted to see Lambert just kind of like go on a little bit more. Maybe build that heat up a little bit more before getting that confrontation. But this just seemed like a, bit of a celebrity cameo, one night only type of thing. What do you think, John? Do you think he comes back?
It's a good question. Like, he's still involved with like MLW doing stuff with King Mo. But I just read this as like a one-off. That's what it felt like. Like, it was in Miami. It's not too far from Coconut Creek, and you bring them in. I think if you were going to do something more, you would have shot a bigger angle for it. But I mean, the door is always open that you could have Lambert come back and he brings people next time or do something with him. He's a great talker. Any wrestling company could find a usage for a Dan Lambert. It's just this company, my God, it's an embarrassment of riches when it comes to talkers.
I thought it looked a little bit silly cutting back to Nunez and Masvidal, though, just watching their coach get beaten up. And I understand, like ultimately it's a wrestling angle, but you know, to maintain the illusion that this was real, come on, those two would have like come in.
Maybe they disagree with his philosophy. Maybe they don't think the industry has been downhill since the late 90s.
They're clearly not VHS fans.
So anyway, it just felt that this promo was completely designed for Twitter.
Oh, he was fantastic. It was great.
Next week, the show in Austin, Texas has the Coffin match, Matt Hardy versus Christian, Brian Cage against Ricky Starks, the return of Yuka Sakazaki against Penelope Ford, Jon Moxley versus Carl Anderson for the U.S. title, and Hangman Page will speak.
Fyter Fest.
Fyter Fest, night 1.
Stacked. Honestly, like the next 4 shows, or the next 3, I guess, are all going to probably be at a similar level.
Do you think the Coffin match headlines next week?
Ooh, well, if not that, then what? What do we talk? What else is on this?
I don't see Moxley and Anderson or Cage and Starks. I think the Coffin match has to be the main event next week.
I think so too. It's a big Darby match, and I think Darby in the main event has been a home run every single time.
Darby has been a home run in those main event segments. I thought anyway this should be the main event, and I think it will. It's a big. I think like it also goes. Like these main event slots, I think it really resonates with the audience with the positioning in this show. Sammy Guevara is a bigger star because that match was not in the middle of the show. It ended the show. It helped that it was a phenomenal match, but the positioning helps because the main players get put in the main event. And I think next week, if they come through, it positions Ethan Page at a higher level just because of that association.
Completely agreed. And I think Mox versus Anderson sounds like a really good opener to me.
Yeah, you could certainly bookend the show with that. I'm also kind of interested to see
Wild Thing in front of a crowd.
That's right. We'll get Wild Thing next week. I think Yuka Sakazaki and Penelope Ford could be a sleeper match next week.
Yes.
So it looks like a good lineup next week.
Cage and Starks as well.
Main event, street fight for the tag titles, the Young Bucks against Penta and Eddie Kingston. With the Young Bucks, they shaved this week, but they also invested in jorts.
Jorts and Jordans. A very unique
These were not just these were not John Cena jorts. Dude, these were Steve Austin jorts, like thigh high.
Yeah, I don't know like what era they're trying to like parody here, like what they're going for. I just think that they're probably like going to like, I don't know, Value Village and picking out the most obnoxious things. Obviously not the Jordans from Value Village, but just what is a piece of clothing that we can use to elicit a reaction, and they put it on their bodies. Eddie Kingston was wearing a Terry Funk shirt.
I didn't even notice that. Oh, good pickup on your behalf. Yeah, that was, Terry Funk has put out a statement, but tons of messages in just support for Terry Funk. So that was nice of him to wear a shirt. Michael Nakazawa got hit with a super kick when the Bucks missed and took him out on the floor. Penta dove off the top, landing on Nick with a stomp to the groin, described as an involuntary vasectomy. And then the big moment was Penta coming off the apron, putting Matt through a table with a Canadian destroyer.
Insane. And like everything was happening so fast here that it almost like, I know like the people in the truck were probably having trouble keeping up. Like, so some of these moments were almost like you didn't get like exactly the full view, but they did cut the replay.
Have you noticed what I now am doing for Dynamite matches?
No.
I'm not listing the time any longer because I cannot time these matches. There's too much. I've got to pause. I've got to rewind to make sure I don't miss things.
They were definitely running up against the clock, for this.
They were. I mean, this one, I don't know. It did feel at times like they were powering through because this did not start until what you would say 16, 17 minutes left in the show.
Maybe.
Roughly.
Yeah. But they just had a lot to get
with a commercial in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie goes for a rear naked choke onto Matt, but Nick climbs to the top and he ends up hitting Rick Knox with the 450. So Knox is out because there are no rules.
Well, explain that to me, okay? Because like you're in that scenario. Why not jump on the opponent to free your brother? I would understand if this was a DQ match, so you can attack the referee and get the Good Brothers to come in, but the Good Brothers could have come in anyway.
Did you read any of this into? Because I was watching this, especially with Rick Knox as the referee, who has been criticized greatly with that Bully Ray Tony Khan segment recently, where Bully Ray was bringing up like the lack of rules being enforced and such. I mean, this was a match that just to me, it hammered that home. Like, here's a street fight. We have no rules. And they made that very clear here. This spot may be typifying it.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I didn't really hear the comments, so I can't really say.
Well, Rick Knox was taken out with the 450, so couldn't register the finish because Matt starts tapping as Rick Knox is unconscious. Brandon Cutler gets the spray, but then is powerbombed through a table by Frankie Kazarian, the Elite Hunter. Fear Factor is attempted to Matt, who avoids it. Then Kingston hits the Hurricane, and he's out, but so is Rick Knox. So Paul Turner runs in. Nick pulls Paul Turner out, and then Kazarian clotheslines Nick. So Gallows and Anderson run down. They take out Kazarian with the Magic Killer. Kingston brings in thumbtacks, and Matt whips them into Eddie's face.
Oh,
Penta comes back with a trash can to Matt. There's a super Frankensteiner by Nick to Penta that was unbelievable, with Penta landing on the tacks. Eddie makes the save, and the culmination of the match sees Eddie take a double super kick. They throw tacks at Penta and super kick him, put tacks into the mouth of Eddie, going full on like PWG style of Young Bucks, and super kick Eddie in the mouth with the tacks as the Bucks win the match.
So we're throwing thumbtacks now. We're just whipping them like at opponents.
You are digesting tacks.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've seen like the super kicking thumbtacks into the mouth before. It's great. It's wonderful. And you know what? Throwing thumbtacks at people. I just hope whoever's taking it keeps their eyes closed, including the people in the front row. But probably hurts a bit less, and I think it's very devastating looking. But man, this was I think a crazy sprint. 1 million spots crammed into this thing. It did feel very rushed towards the end with them going boom, boom, boom. But maybe that's part of the appeal because it was also very entertaining.
It was like a really, really entertaining match. I would say I preferred last week's. Like last week's to me, maybe it was also having that opening segment. Like you're not watching the clock with that opening match or any other matches beyond the main event. But that's not to downgrade. This was a pretty spectacular street fight that I imagine those live, this would have been out of this world.
Yeah.
Just watching this.
With the amount of stuff they threw in there, definitely felt worthy of a main event. And I thought a great way to like put in a big exclamation mark on an excellent return to touring for AEW. This felt like a big show.
It was. I mean, the crowd atmosphere. I mean, this was, it was AEW back to where Dynamite would be the show you would watch each week. And it's, man, I want to be in that crowd. Like, this is a commercial for the next show. When this comes to your town, you don't want to just watch this at home. Like, this is an experience to go live and watch these shows. And that's what tonight felt like in Miami.
You had, like important wrestling, like good matches. Like, was there anything, maybe nothing on the level of like what we got last week? Definitely not, I would say, with that main event last week. But, you did have a big surprise appearance in Tommy N. What's his name?
Malakai Black.
Malakai Black. Yes. The Andrade debut match, I thought, was a bit of a spectacle for that reason. And Dan Lambert, to me, was a big highlight of this show. I thought he was fantastic. So, yeah, man, it was a good show.
It was a fun show, definitely. All right, forum.postwrestling.com. Tonight's show getting a 7.45. Not at the level of last week's, but last week was, one of the best episodes of the year, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's start off with Noah from Vaughn. He was very high on tonight's show. He gave it a 10 out of 10. The matches were all entertaining and enhanced by a super hot crowd. Main event was a classic AEW hardcore match that was just spectacular, but the biggest story has to be the fact that WWE really messed up by A, not doing anything with Aleister Black for months on end, and B, releasing him at a time like this where he can instantly head to AEW and be a huge star. Black alongside Andrade are two incredible additions to an already stacked main event scene. AEW just feels so hot right now. It's just great.
We got a Jake from the Windy City who says a very fresh edition of Dynamite, but that they're out of Daly's place. I couldn't help but feel insanely happy for Hangman. Even if you didn't include the story arc before TV, it's been crazy. The guy who lost his big chance and lost his way to get that pop now. Insane. I really enjoyed Black's debut here, although I thought Excalibur made it kind of awkward by mentioning he wrestled him 15 years ago, which I don't know if that had any relevancy whatsoever. I think that I agree with you, Jake. I don't think it was all that important for him to mention it, but I think what Excalibur was going for was the fact that, hey, I recognize that guy. I recognize that guy from my past because most people don't know him as Tommy End. Most people
he couldn't be in the role of who is that. Like that would be against his credibility. Like Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone, I wouldn't even go so far. Like you can't. Your audience knows who it is, so you can't play. Yeah,
nor could you say like that's the guy from the other channel. You know, like maybe that. So he had to call him Tommy End, and he had to justify who Tommy End was, and I think that was probably the closest way he was able to do it. But then Jake goes on to say, but Dan Lambert doing the cranky stuck in the past wrestling curmudgeon who nitpicks everything on the show gimmick freaking ruled. Even though he has a lot on his plate, I would love to see him do an occasional program here and there. Overall, what a show for a return to the road. The crowd was hot. So many amazing moments. 9 black masses out of 10.
Raphael from North Liberty. Tonight felt fresher than I thought it would. Getting out of Daly's place was such a huge change, both in terms of setting and fans. They had their own energy that really made tonight feel special. A 10 out of 10 show for me. The highlights were Malakai Black's debut being foreshadowed in the Cody match, Britt Baker's promo, Kenny Omega and Adam Page's outfits, Kenny's low blow to Uno, and of course the main event. I can't wait for next week. Nights like tonight are why I love professional wrestling.
Dan from Toronto says, I had a fabulous time watching Dynamite. From bloody tack tosses to big-time surprises, right to sizzling hot Dan Lambert action, I got 2 hours of wrestling thrills, chills, and spills. Heck, tonight I found that I'm desperately craving a series of MJF audiobooks about mythology. I have lots to gush about, but I also have 2 mild gripes. 1. Unless the touching the corners rule is dropped, I've had my fill of strap matches for this quarter century. I don't mind the strap. It's the irritating touch all the turnbuckles thing. I'm sure it was great when Eisenhower was in office, but it feels archaic today. I hate this type of match. It can eat a family-sized bag of shit. Any thoughts on that criticism, John? Strap matches.
I mean, generally strap matches, I'm very done with like the overdone ending of, and they teased it once in the match where you have the aggressor and then the guy behind him hitting all the turnbuckles behind him. I'm so done with that finish. Tonight, they didn't do that. That wasn't the ending. So I didn't really have a problem. Like tonight's match worked. And it was in a perfect spot. Like your first match in front of this crowd. Well, I mean, they had watched like the dark matches and such, but you know, on the show proper. Hot crowd. You've got Cody, your big baby face. I thought tonight's opener worked.
As an opener, like when it's not given a great deal of importance, you know, to carry a show, I think it's fine. It doesn't offend me too much, but I also don't love it, and I never really look forward to it that much either way. He also says, too, Chris Statlander was amazing tonight, but are we going to keep getting such small portions of women's wrestling until Rampage debuts? Fans dig the women's division, but it still feels like an afterthought outside of Britt Baker's universe. I do not disagree with Dan. You know, there are a lot of people that just like they appear and then they just disappear. They're either like on dark or you just don't kind of like see them. Like Sheeta's injured? Am I right? Is she injured?
I don't know. I don't think so.
She's not. Yeah. So where the hell is Karu Sheeta then? You know, like, or like really like anybody else on this show?
I mean, you have the match announcement next week, so you at least have Yuka Sakazaki back in the mix.
So Hansi says she wrestled on Dark or Elevation. Okay, great. And yeah, I mean, like, it always feels like we're just focused on like, one principal program when it's a whole division now. And we're past the point of like, the argument that the talent isn't there. It's there and it's like really strong. So I agree.
Let's keep going here with Eric from Miami. I went live and this was one hell of a show. During the early Dark Elevation taping, the lights went out on Justin Roberts. So then when it happened with Cody, I figured it was an angle. I don't know if the entire Dan Lambert promo aired on Dynamite, but it was incredible. He had us booing and cheering within a second. When the show was over, Tony Khan pointed out that this was Eddie Kingston's first AEW with live fans and told us to stick around because Jungle Boy would be in action as well as Darby Allin with Sting in his corner. Finally, I guess Luchasaurus has to change his finisher. Because of the black mass.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, they can call it different things. All right, we got a Kate from Montreal who will be joining me this Friday on REWIND-A-SmackDown. But Kate, for AEW, she says, I have been making sacrifices to many gods that one particular WWE star would come to AEW, and I guess I finally hit on the right one. Aleister Black was one of my favorite parts of NXT when he was there, and my disillusionment with the main roster was greatly exacerbated by the way in which he was handled. I think they could have filled the rest of the 2 hours with a kazoo orchestra doing Rush covers, and I would have been happy. That sounds awesome, actually. I'd be happy with that too. But really, the whole show delivered. It was great seeing Andrade in action again. The wordless confrontation with Omega and Page was a fantastic moment that absolutely needed the crowd to reach its full potential. I really liked the face-off between Ethan Page and Darby too. There was a good story there, and even though most people won't have followed it, I thought they did a good job of laying it out. Right now, I'm trying to think of anyone on the WWE roster who is going to be as over with crowds as Hangman. I can't think of a babyface that would get anything close to the reaction I saw tonight, unless it's Becky coming back. Hockey is dead to me. There is only wrestling and soccer.
Well, all things have to come to an end, including the Montreal Canadiens run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But hey, a first and maybe only time that we'll be talking about the Stanley Cup final ending in July.
Wow, you're right. Yeah, well, let's hope.
All right. That's going to wrap up the show. Thanks to all of our double Ice Cap and Espresso patrons that joined us live tonight in the Zoom room. You can do so after every Raw, every Dynamite, and Friday on Rewind-A-SmackDown. All patrons can join Way and Kate from Montreal live and share their uneasiness about the Montreal Canadiens failing to unseat the Tampa Bay Lightning. Do you remember who Tampa Bay beat the last time they won the Stanley Cup?
No clue.
Calgary. They're the Canadian Killers.
There you go. Well, unfortunate, but, she'll have had 2 days to recover from it. And we're happy for all of our listeners in Tampa who are hockey fans, of course. Okay, so Way is going to be back Thursday night with MCU Later with WH Park, and then Friday night with Rewind-A-SmackDown. I will have a UFC 264 preview on Friday with Phil and Eric, and then post-show Saturday night right after Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. You can watch that show live on the Post Wrestling YouTube channel. Right after the main event, we will be going live and running through all of the fights. And then Sunday, the NWA podcast. All can be found at postwrestling.com. Subscribe to Post Wrestling wherever you get your podcasts. And brand new shirt at store.postwrestling.com featuring the 4 pillars. A hot seller. I know Eddie Kingston would love this shirt. It is the 4 pillars of heaven promoting, well, it is in promotion, I suppose, of the long and winding Royal Road. So get it right now at store.postwrestling.com.
And that is it. We are out. Goodbye.